On behalf of the Swiss Consulate, I would like to welcome you to the opening event of the Swiss Innovation Fest. The Consul General, Andreas Ruffer, and I have talked time and time again about how we would like to organize an event at the intersection of arts and science. And then in the beginning of 2020, just before the pandemic, it seems like a lifetime ago, I met Scott Mallory. He's member of the Dynamic Media faculty at Emily Carr, Arts and Culture Curator at Triumph, and the founder of ISM Arts Culture. And together we started to develop the idea of a series of events around arts and science. And last year we started to reach out to our local partners, and we started to develop what we now call the Innovation Fest. I would like to thank Scott and his team for the partnership. And then one of the first to come on board for our festival was Swiss photographer Andri. The Consul General already worked with him in Boston, and we thought if we would like to organize something around arts and science Vancouver, we have to bring his work to Vancouver. And his photographs from the exhibition Inside CERN, which you've all seen in front of our networking reception, they're going to be on display here at Science World for 3 months. And I hope you also got the chance to look through his book Inside CERN, because there are many, many pictures of this institution. Andri, I would like to thank you for your early trust you put in us, and also for traveling all the way to Vancouver. And now I would like to introduce our exceptional partner institutions who made this festival possible. So tonight's host, Science World, they're the leading science center in Vancouver, and they're a strong advocate of science, innovation, and art. We are very honored to be here today and to welcome a few members of Science World, Teresa Virani, Nancy Roper, and Jennifer Cook. Thank you so much. Then our other partner is Triumph, Canada's National Particle Accelerator Centre. They're based on the campus of the University of British Columbia. And we're honored to welcome the director, Nigel Smith, as well as Sean Lee and Jesse Abney. They will be represented at today's panel, and they're also hosting another event with us on Saturday. Our Swiss partner is CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, the world's leading institution in science. We planned to be part of this panel. Unfortunately, our panelist, she just arrived this afternoon in Vancouver, so her flight might have been delayed. So she's here, okay. Change of plans, she's here. I think she deserves an applause. She just landed at 4 p.m. and now she's here. So thank you, Clara. And then the other partner institution we have is Emily Carr University of Arts and Design, and they're not only a big name in academia, but also in the global art scene. We have a few members of Emily Carr University today at today's event, and I especially want to welcome Justine Langlois, Interim Associate VP Research and Dean of Graduate Studies. They're also going to be part of today's panel, and they will host another event on Friday. And last but not least, the New Media Gallery in New Westminster. They are hosting the exhibition Indivisible, featuring 2 former artists in residence from Arts at CERN. That's the cultural department of CERN, and the exhibition will be in June. We're happy to welcome Chuck Puchmeyer. He's from the city of New Westminster, and they will also host another event on Saturday with us. And with that, I would like to turn the floor to Teresa Virani, Chief Experience and Marketing Officer at Science World.
I'm a little shorter than Nina. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by gratefully acknowledging that we are on this Science World is located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nations. Today, Indigenous knowledge is highly valued by scientists such as archaeologists, ecologists, biologists, and others. And in many cases, science is catching up to what Indigenous people have long since known. A great local example of what we know about earthquakes here in the Pacific Northwest. So what Indigenous people knew all along, geologists have only known since 1984. So we have a lot to learn. Thank you all for coming this evening. We are excited to be hosting this opening reception for Innovation Fest and kicking off a week of what sounds like some really amazing events. We're also excited to host the Inside CERN photography show, and I'm still trying to decide on my favorite photograph, but there's so many to pick from. I think it's the dancing. Science World is all about connecting people with science and nature and igniting wonder. It's based into our mission. And I once heard somebody describe scientists and artists as the world's noticers, and that just really stuck with me. Science World, we're really committed to STEAM. We know that if we add art and design, along with science, technology, engineering, and math, we can provide learning opportunities for many more people and help to bring some diversity into our fields by providing some different entry points. And I know I'd have maybe appreciated a different doorway when I was at school. I'd like to thank the Swiss Consulate and Innovation Fest for giving us the opportunity to host this event, and thank you to the Ambassador of Switzerland to Canada, Salome Meyer, the Consul General of Switzerland, Andreas Rufer, and thank you, Nina. You have been a wonderful collaborator, and I know the team have really enjoyed working with you. I'd also like to recognize our co-hosts of Innovation Fest, so Triumph, Emily Carr, and New Media Gallery. We're honored and proud to be alongside some esteemed institutions in our community. And now I'd like to welcome the Ambassador to give her introduction. Thank you.
Minister, Councillor, Teresa, dear friends, it's so good to be here, I have to say. The last 2 years have not been easy, not for any of us. But if the last 2 years have shown us something, then it is the importance of science and innovation. Science is trying to address, analyze, grasp global challenges that we have, whether it is the pandemic or whether it is the climate crisis. And innovation is finding the solutions to actually tackle these challenges and allow us to move forward. Switzerland and Canada, we have a long-standing tradition of research and innovation excellence. It's very interesting to note that leading universities in both countries are positioned almost identically and very highly, may I add, in key world university rankings. And so the constant push for new innovation is naturally following the two countries' ambitions. In fact, Switzerland is a global leader in innovation. We've been ranking on the top spot of the Global Innovation Index for 10 years in a row. And Canada and Vancouver in particular is home to some of the world's most innovative companies. We've been able to visit some of them today. For instance, also biotech companies such as Apcelera, which is building their new manufacturing plant apparently just down the road from here. And so it's all very close. It's a true hub of innovation here. And more pertinent to British Columbia, the province's higher education institutions have numerous agreements with Swiss universities, with their Swiss counterparts. We have representatives of Emily Carr here, of the University of British Columbia, of Simon Fraser University, and of the University of the Fraser Valley. And all of these institutions have agreements with Swiss University, which, of course, as an ambassador, is a particularly nice thing to see and to follow. Representing an innovative country such as Switzerland in such an innovative host country leads to incredibly inspiring collaborations. And it is a true privilege for me in my last 3.5 years to witness this collaboration happening. In mid-March, just a good month ago, the Swiss Embassy co-hosted with our Canadian friends a high-level clean tech innovation summit, which brought together actors of different sort of backgrounds. When you talk about innovation, what we focus on normally is the interaction Between science and business, we look at the commercialization of innovation. We look at the role of academia, of the private sector, and of course of governments. But what about art? Where does art fit in here? The pandemic has shown us, and me personally, something that I find very important, which is art is core to our humanity. Art is more than just an outlet of escapism. Art gives meaning, particularly in times of disruption, particularly in times of uncertainty. Now, art doesn't have to serve a purpose, don't get me wrong. Art is free. But because of that, art actually creates a space. It creates a space for reflection. It creates a space for dialogue, sometimes in situations where words fail us. And that reflection, that dialogue, this space is fertile ground for innovation, because innovation does not happen in isolation. It happens through interaction. It happens through a conversation across disciplines, including art. And I would like to really commend the consulate, the colleagues of the consulate to make this a centerpiece of this first Innovation Fest. It's a fantastic topic. We are launching this Swiss Innovation Fest today, a week-long celebration of the interaction of science and art. And we would like to highlight the outstanding work of Switzerland and Canada in the fields of innovation, in the fields of science and technology, and to profile the existing collaborations that exist. We also want to showcase the exciting interaction at the intersection of art and science, the topic of today's panel discussion. I wish us all an enjoyable evening and an interesting Innovation Fest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for highlighting those important, interesting connections between our two countries. We are honored now to welcome the Honorable Bruce Ralston, Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation of BC. Minister Ralston is also the government liaison with the Consular Corps. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nina, for that introduction. Her Excellency Ambassador Meyer, Consul General Rufer, all the members of the Consular Corps, I'm gratified that as the person who is the liaison with the Consular Corps, so many of you have turned out this evening. It's always a pleasure to see you and to work with you. Friends, let me begin by thanking the Consulate General of Switzerland for organizing the Innovation Festival and making all of this happen. It's truly an honor to be with you here this evening on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I bring greetings from Premier Horgan. I know he's often in the news, although his health has been unfortunately a little bit too much in the news, but I can assure you that he's doing better. He found his way, and as was mentioned, science is very important and very powerful. He went through 35 radiation treatments and came out the other side recovered. We're very grateful for that, although he did catch COVID shortly after that, and I think he's almost through that as well. So it's been a rough pandemic for the Premier, but aside from the election win, but we're all very gratified that he's back and feeling better, and I think next week he'll be back in the legislature. So he's a huge Star Trek fan. There are those kind of people, you know, and he would take a great interest in the Inside CERN exhibit and ask whether CERN and Triumph could collaborate to make the Starship Enterprise's warp drive a reality. So this festival is an exciting opportunity to embrace science, technology, the arts, industry, and innovation. And what better place to kick it off than here at Vancouver's striking geodesic dome, Science World. This venue excites all ages, and many of you with children or grandchildren will have come here with those bright-eyed kids who just love this place, and so they should. It's got all kinds of interactive educational exhibits and really a joy to visit. And I'm sure that Andri Paul's photographs of CERN, the world's largest physics laboratory located in Geneva, will ignite curiosity and spark wonder in those who visit. I saw a documentary about CERN a few years ago, and I think I was discussing with the Consul General. One came out of that documentary feeling like you might have understood just a little bit of what they do there. It was an impressive documentary. And like the documentary, this exhibit provides glimpses into the lives of physicists, engineers, scientists, their pursuit of knowledge, and their cutting-edge research in particles of matter that make up the world around us. The very small particles have led to big collaborations between Switzerland and our country's Laboratory for Particle and Nuclear Physics, TRIUMPH, located right here in Vancouver, British Columbia. We're very proud of the research conducted at TRIUMPH as it pushes the frontiers in research, discovery, and innovation. Switzerland, of course, has a propensity for innovation. Even the popular, somewhat cliched views of Switzerland confirm that. One only needs to look at a Swiss-made watch, for example, to be reminded of that, or pull out a Swiss Army knife. The blade, the fork, the screwdriver, the tweezers, the scissors, the magnifying glass, the corkscrew, all jammed into that famous red handle. So, but obviously Switzerland and innovation is much more than those very prosaic examples. It's home to renowned research institutes and expertise, which is why, as the ambassador mentioned, Canada signed a joint statement on science, technology, and innovation in 2018, promoting cooperation between institutions in those domains. Here in British Columbia, our government recently launched the Stronger BC Economic Plan. The plan is bold, ambitious, and right for the moment and for the future we want. Our plan is leading us on a path to a cleaner, stronger economy for everyone by, one, meeting our climate commitments, obviously a key concern after the year we've just experienced, leading on environmental and social responsibility, and fostering innovation across the economy. In British Columbia, we see innovation as the process of generating or applying fresh ideas to develop new or improved products or services. Through our economic plan, our government is fostering innovation across the economy by supporting talent development, tech adoption, scale-up of small businesses, and collaboration between the innovation ecosystem and other sectors of the economy. Business, industry, and government are harnessing the power of innovation to add value to products and services in both new and traditional industries. Let me give you a couple of examples. We're implementing the Mass Timber Action Plan to build on BC's position as a world leader in the development of mass timber, a new value-added, low-carbon technology that promises to revolutionize the way we build here at home and in emerging markets around the world. We've created the new BC Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy, which will bring together innovators, companies, governments, and researchers to accelerate the commercialization of clean energy technology and products, including low-carbon hydrogen. We are investing in BC-based carbon capture and storage and other low-carbon technologies. The federal government, I think, has recognized some of these initiatives, not specifically, but these sectors, in their recent budget, in particular carbon capture and storage offering some tax benefits to companies who choose to make that investment. We're countering climate change through Clean BC Roadmap to 2030. We're scaling up, and this is a particular pet project of mine, to be a world leader in quantum computing by creating the Quantum Algorithms Institute at Simon Fraser University. We're positioning British Columbia as a worldwide life sciences hub through the life sciences and biomanufacturing strategy, nurturing new talent, developing new lab space, and leveraging the research capacities of BC's post-secondary sector. We're providing supports to businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits across British Columbia to bring new products and ideas to market, adopt leading-edge technologies, secure talent, while opening the doors of economic opportunity for Indigenous people and traditionally underrepresented groups through our Crown agency, Innovate BC. We're also continuing to invest, as the Ambassador pointed out, in post-secondary research infrastructure that gives students and researchers access to the latest technology, tools, and equipment they need to drive research projects forward through our BC Knowledge Development Fund. Events like this are an opportunity to showcase, educate, and exchange ideas across sectors. It's also an opportunity to reflect on and celebrate Canada and Switzerland's unique ties. Back in the early 1900s, Swiss guides brought their expertise to Western Canada, helping to shape our Canadian mountain culture. Our strong connection goes beyond our mountainous landscapes of the Alps and the Rockies. Canada hosts the 5th largest, I'm told, Swiss diaspora abroad. More than 155,000 Canadians are of Swiss origin, and there are an estimated 20,000 Canadians in Switzerland, many of whom are dual citizens. Our universities, both here and in Switzerland, are world-class, and as a result, we share numerous agreements reinforcing the quality of education, research, and innovation in both countries. Commercially, we enjoy a strong and diverse relationship covering the full spectrum of trade and investment. So I look forward, on behalf of the Government of British Columbia, to the continuing growth of our relationship, be it through cultural ties, through art, as the Ambassador has said, or innovation. Once again, it's a privilege to be here and share in this exchange. Wish you all a pleasant evening and a very successful Innovation Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Ralston, for your remarks and for joining us tonight. And now I would like to give the word to City Councillor Lisa Dominato.
Good evening, everyone, and bear with me as I work off an iPhone. I'm not used to doing that, so I'll give you a try. But my name is Councillor Lisa Dominato. I'm here on behalf of Mayor and Council this evening. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I was particularly pleased to be invited to represent the city this evening, having spent, I lived in Europe for 2 years. I spent some time in Switzerland, and I was talking with the ambassador about the official languages of which I speak French fluently, but I also studied Italian and German as well, and really enjoyed my time there, and I think it connects us, language. But I do want to start first off by thanking the Consul General for convening all of you this evening. I know that we have representation across sectors in terms of science, arts, technology, and because I think dialogue is critical in terms of advancing this work. And so the fact that we're able to join in a room today, and I know as the ambassador acknowledged, it's been a difficult number of years, and we haven't been able to gather. And so thank you for doing so. And thank you to Science World for opening this space. I couldn't think of a better place to be doing this, just as Minister Ralston acknowledged. I bring my children here, and I'm very excited to be able to bring them to the photo gallery of CERN. I think it's fantastic. So just to acknowledge that as well. As has been noted, Canada and Switzerland have a very long history of partnership and innovation, and I'm very excited to see what that looks like going forward and how we strengthen that partnership. And again, I think this evening is a part of that. Vancouver, as many of you know, because many of you live here, you work here, is really a center of excellence for innovation, for science, for technology, and arts. We've already talked about Triumph at UBC, and the ambassador took the words out of my mouth, the example of Abcelera and the work that Abcelera has done as a headquarters here that started at UBC, but was able to develop an antibody treatment to COVID, and that's a fantastic example to the point of how we have these wicked challenges in our world we're dealing with, whether it be health issues, whether it be climate issues, is that right here in Vancouver, we had a tech sector company that was able to develop an antibody and contribute to dealing with COVID, and so that was fantastic. And also recognizing Emily Carr as a university institution in our city and a partner here in Innovation Fest. And I want to speak to that a little bit because I think one of the things, particularly for me growing up when I was studying, we really had binary conversations about science was over here, arts was over here, and they did not intersect. And in fact, that's not true. And a really great example of that is architecture and design. As you know, there's a program at Emily Carr, and as a city councillor, I see that every day in our housing conversations. I sit through public hearings, and housing, building homes for people, is that intersect of engineering, technology, arts, and we see that in the design, but also in the engineering infrastructure of homes, and that's something I deal with on a regular basis. But I just want to acknowledge how important it is to have this intersect and conversation. And I really want to thank Andri Paul for the photography. It's fantastic. And thank all of you for being here to engage in the conversation. I'm not going to take any more time because I know you have a great panel to look forward to. But thank you for inviting the City of Vancouver. We're really pleased to be a host city here as well, and look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks and also for being here. It's such a pleasure to have such a wonderful crowd. So since our aim of the Innovation Fest is to shed light on the joint work of arts and science, we are very pleased to invite you now to a panel discussion where our guests will talk about the importance of the intersection of art and science, and will illustrate it with personal examples. So I'm happy to welcome Jennifer Cook, Creative Director of Science World, as the moderator. Then we have Stuart Shepherd, Communications Specialist from Triumph, Ingrid Koenig, artist from Emily Carr University, Clara Nellist, physicist from CERN, and Andri Paul, our photographer. So I would like to welcome you to the stage, and let's start with the panel discussion.
Okay, looks like we're all settled. Clara, so glad that you could make it. I am Jen Cook. As was mentioned, I'm the creative director here at Science World, and I'm very honored to be the moderator of tonight's panel. I'm actually going to start by having each person just introduce themselves a little bit. We're going to practice sharing the mics here a little bit as well. So just let us know who you are and a little bit about what you do. Starting with Ingrid.
Okay, thanks. I'm a faculty at Emily Carr University of Art and Design. I'm an artist, and I teach in visual arts, graduate studies, and I've also been artist in residence for some years at Triumph. I head a project that is funded by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council that is called Leaning Out of Windows, Artistic Transformations and Collaborations with Physics. And we look at how can we bring collaboration between artists and physicists and create a more cross-disciplinary kind of knowledge a cross-disciplinary awareness of knowledge practices that break open the silos that were developed some hundreds of years ago, but they weren't always there. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ingrid. My name is Stu Shepherd. I'm a communication specialist at Triumph. I write, I edit, I take photos of a different caliber than some of our other panelists. I've worked in advertising, media, marketing. I've also worked in science as a research assistant in genetics, biology, chemistry, etc. So I kind of have a foot on both sides of the fence. And yeah, I'm excited, and it's a privilege to be up here with you all today.
So, hi, I'm Clara. I'm a particle physicist working at CERN. So I work on the ATLAS experiment at CERN. I'm also a science communicator, and my passion is sharing the work that we do at CERN with anybody who wants to hear about it. And my specialty at the moment is creating videos on TikTok. So that's my recent foray into a new medium.
We'll ask you about that for sure.
Yes, hello. I'm Andri Paul. I'm a photojournalist, and I'm trying to define what places, what people are, how it functions, and in that context, I try my best to stay as long as possible in places. As I was at CERN, it took 2 years to finalize the book that you can look at. Yes.
Wonderful. So while we have you, Andri, man of the hour, I'm so curious to hear a little bit more about your experience at CERN. Was there anything that surprised you? What were the sort of memorable moments of all the time you spent there?
well, there were many memorable moments, but I go to places just to understand, and means that usually I do a lot of research work before I go somewhere, and then I listen, I ask, and I try to catch the atmosphere, to find pictures for it, and at CERN it took 2 years because it was not that easy to find pictures, because CERN is a huge place with a lot of buildings from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and with a lot of people working there, with a lot of restricted areas, and with a lot of people very open-minded, but at the beginning many of them just didn't understand really what I wanted, and that was the same for me. So it took quite a while just to get the feeling from the two sides what I was doing, and you can imagine what was for me amazing, and that was the reason why the editor Lars Müller and I, we were discussing with a glass of wine what could we do as a next project, and one of the things was we should do something about a place that many people heard of, but one doesn't know really what's happening there. And among others was CERN. And CERN is one of these places. I mean, you see a lot of pictures of this spectacular technology and these machines and all these experiments, but you don't see any people. And sometimes you have people, but it's just to illustrate the size of the machines. And this is, everything is on the ground. But I was wondering, well, what's happening on the surface? Because there are 2,500 people working there, but what are they doing? And to my surprise, a lot what was happening, where you see people in front of a computer, all working on all the data from the experiments. So, for the photography, it was not really very exciting at the beginning. I was thinking, well, what do I do here? And then I realized, no, there's a lot more happening. And what was for me the most incredible thing is you understand that for science you need communication. And I think a lot of the people at CERN, they just adore to be among colleagues. And they're on the same level. I mean, 99.9% of the population don't understand what they're doing. But the people there, they really can share and find out more. And they use a blackboard to communicate. And that was, for me, really astonishing, a blackboard. I mean, I know it from at school, 50 years ago, but they're standing 3-4 people in front of a blackboard, and on the blackboard you have all these formulas, and they're talking to each other and then writing down what they think, but they think too quick, so they try to erase what they've written, because the next one is no, and then there's the next formula, and they try to wipe it off, and then comes the next formula. And these were just all those little things. I was just, wow, it's so amazing.
Clara,
I can see our director laughing. Our Drive director.
I was going to say, Clara, does that sound familiar? Yeah. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the photographs at all or have seen them previously, but when you view work like this, how does it resonate with you?
Yeah, so I was looking at them when I came in, and actually I've seen some of them before being shown. And what you were saying about the people and the human side, I think, is really important, because we do have these really sophisticated equipment and the accelerator and our detectors, but what really makes CERN special in the research we do is the people that are working there. So it's really nice to see the human side in the photographs as well.
Yeah, some tango lessons in there, some people eating their lunch hurriedly. Yeah, that was definitely one thing that jumped out at me about the photos, is that contrast between, you know, that there's this highly sophisticated equipment there doing very impressive things that I don't understand, but things like chalkboards, things like, you know, notices posted up in the lunchroom, it all felt very familiar in that way. So that was really wonderful to see. Ingrid, I'm curious about how Andri's work connects to your work at Triumph. You do a little bit of a similar thing with your work there. Tell us a bit about it.
Thanks. I started to bring my students there. I had been, in my own work, I've been working with physics ideas and how to bring them together with our human experiences and how we bring together, you know, the aspect of navigating the uncertainty principle, but what does that mean in our daily lives? And so trying to bring those aspects together. So I started to teach also based on my research in art and science, studio, and humanities course. And I approached Triumph, and I thought, oh, this would be really great to bring my students here. So I asked them, would it be possible to bring my class? And they were so welcoming for that. And the shock, I think it was a huge shock. It was really popular. I mean, students were lined up to take this kind of a course because they were very hungry for the kind of knowledge, this abstract knowledge. And, you know, where do you even start thinking about these things if you don't have a mathematical language? And so coming in to this massive space full of you know, new technology, old technology from across different, you know, from computers from the 70s and the 60s even, because they still work for what they need to do. The messiness of it too, the clunkiness of some of the material, the shopping carts with old gloves and, you know, crud in the corners. Like the materiality of the place was like fabulous to walk through. But at the same time to think, this is where they're studying exotic particles, the origin of particles, solar events, you know, the nature of time. They're using this equipment, like, I mean, where do you even start? So you're using this equipment to understand that. What is a magnet? You know, how do you trap an atom? So it started to make real what is so abstract out there. And that was a wonderful thing to be able to, for them to go through these spaces and also to have studio time. So the Triumph actually allowed my students to plunk down. So after we had a tour, we would be able to plunk down and they would be able to actually record, if they were sound artists, record what was coming from certain equipment, doing watercolor work, using the magnetic power of the accelerator as a way to move their metal-based drippings of ink, so that the drawings were becoming, you know, were determined by the magnetic power. So it was a way of generating their artwork through the powers, through the forces of this place. At the same time, the physicists were also very generous in coming into my class. So also actually to talk about, okay, what is a black hole? What is, I mean, my students would really tackle them with the toughest kinds of questions that you could ever imagine. And so we'd have these amazing conversations. And one of the things, you know, regardless of the wonderful spaces and the access to looking at how you, one of the physicists said to me once, "This is the largest collaboration in the world." And that's a very moving thing, you know, that idea that there is this massive collaboration in the world around the phenomena of reality. And for the students to be able to enter into that, like one of my students would say, I never thought I'd be able to enter this kind of conversation. Or even that notion of engaging with particle behavior, and like other students would say, nothing will ever be the same again. You know, I'll never look at the world again in that same way because of this access to this knowledge. So it was really that aspect of being able to be at the table. And the chalkboards were, they were so gorgeous themselves, just as mark making as drawing, and yeah. So, but the richness of conversation, it's like a privilege to have that conversation, to be at the table, exchange these things, and to be able to ask what seemed like the stupidest questions, and the physicists having to answer, but actually, they'd answer, and the students would just go, nah, I don't understand. Like Abhishek Kumar, one of the physicists, he was practicing for a TED Talk on dark matter, and he asked if he could practice with my students. So he explained it, and they just, So he had to try a different story. So second story, let's try this. The students still, no, I don't get it. The third time, he told, okay, let me try explain it this way, and he told another story. And then they were, it was just like the light went on and they got it. And so this aspect of making your theory into a story that communicates, and that importance of communication, but also understanding how do you communicate these things.
Absolutely. That's actually a wonderful segue into the topic of science communication. It's been mentioned by a few folks earlier tonight that there has been this separation, or feels like the separation, between art and science. But science communication is one of the areas where that starts to come together a little bit more. So Stu, I'm curious about your work with science communication and your views on where it's at now and where you'd like to see it go.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that. It's really funny to hear about blackboards because I get lost at those. I'll stand in front of them at Triumph and it's like often at the deep end of some midnight lake. I'm trying to figure out the equations and what's going on. But I think it also speaks to the state of science communications. It's really a nascent field. It's still burgeoning. We are connecting scientists and the communities they serve through things like art. And even to this day, careers as science communicators are not really prevalent. You see a lot of journalists who become science communicators or scientists who become science communicators, but as a discrete practice, it's not really come to the fore yet. So, and it's predicated, I think, on some of the themes we've been talking about. One of the things that really sticks out to me is curiosity, and if I may speak a little bit about myself, I feel like I've come to this career, this point in my life, because I've been submerged in curiosity. I'll never forget being 5 or 6 years old and listening to my dad describe the difference between the Rutherford model of the atom and the Bohr model of the atom, and not really understanding why, but being really intrigued. And you can fast forward that through my life, riding the bus up to SFU to a first year chemistry course, being like, why don't you guys think about how amazing space is right now? Or it's so huge, how do you not, the grandeur of it all, And what I came to realize as I went through my career as a sort of a burgeoning scientist, again, just sort of with a Bachelor of Science and learning a little bit about it, and then also being pulled towards sort of the advertising, the journalism part of it, was that people engage with science and its necessary complexities in a very shallow way, and it's not their fault. It's really, we're sending scientists out to the frontiers of our knowledge and asking them to drill deeper, to poke holes in this veil of ignorance that's around our world. And there's a lot of distance between scientists and people who may not be sort of comfortable or familiar with things like the empirical model or something. So it's the thing that really strikes me is that scientists need a little bit of help, but I think people. What we lack today also is an appreciation of things like evidence-based decision-making or empiricism, and that's something that we all have to learn through high school, and it's sort of a systemic problem that requires a systemic solution. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said. Clara, I'm also curious, you have a photography practice as well. Coming at it kind of from both angles, how does your photography practice inform your scientific research and process there, or does it?
So I mean, not nearly to the same scale, but I've always loved taking photographs and having that as a creative outlet. So there was talking about earlier this distinction between science and arts. As a student, when I was younger, I loved both. And I found it very frustrating that I was forced to pick between the two. And so I did end up going on the physics route because that's what I wanted to study at university. But the photography was a way to keep that artistic side open. But I find as a scientist, and actually there's a really great quote by the Director General of CERN, which I don't have perfectly in my head, but essentially that she says that art is constrained by mathematics and proportions and the exactness of color, something like that. And science is creative, and we have to think and push boundaries. And I really like the quote that she says because it sort of flips the idea. So the photography that I do is also a way to explore the world around me, the same way that the physics I do is a way to explore the world around me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's a great point about, we have these perceptions of what science is and what art is. Maybe I'll just open it up to the panel. What are some of the amazing things that can happen? Why is it important to bring art and science together at all?
Maybe if I might, I've always been really struck by people who take a really deep interest in science. I think as a science communicator, often we get pigeonholed into what's the most interesting science fact that you can share at a party, or here's a really cool fact about how banana slugs mate or something. And it's sort of, interesting. And I mean, it's ironic that we're sort of at a cocktail party and I'm up here talking about banana slugs now. So there's a bit of interest. But I'm struck too by the connection to, the folks in the audience who are familiar with the business and commerce worlds, people like Seth Godin, who said that there's a difference between the hustle, which is taking more of the audience's attention than you deserve through gimmicks or tricks, and then there's marketing, which is connecting people to things that they truly care about. And I think science really is something that everybody can care about, and we just need to find the right formula for connecting people to it and connecting them to the value of why. I think that art is one of the ways through which people can see science and overcome either some of a prejudice or a feeling of not being adequate or something enough to understand it. And in that way, it's perhaps one of the most valuable vectors that we've ever had. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it also breaks down some of the barriers that sometimes people put up themselves because they're told, and I hear it all the time when I say I'm a particle physicist, I get the comment of, oh, you must be really smart. And I don't like that comment because I feel like it separates people. And I was talking on the plane over here to a nurse who's from Canada who went over to do humanitarian work, and I was just like, you must have studied loads, and I was really impressed with what he did. So I don't like the barrier, and I think that art is then a way that you can start on the same footing and people don't feel quite so intimidated about the science. And then when people are more relaxed about it, they learn a lot more and they embrace it a lot more because you don't have the fear of having to get it right and having to understand. You can just enjoy it and interpret it and then learn along the way.
Well, I wanted to say something. Yes, I think there's one of the things that amazes me. I take pictures of a lot of artists also, not only a lot of scientists and artists. And I have the impression, I mean, if you allow yourself just to try a lot, or you just are open to everything, to anything. You can be scientists or artists. It's the same. I mean, you need this openness if you want to go further and to invent something. And it's good when this connection is made, that you feel really, there is not a big difference, really not, for me.
I
I think what Stu was saying also about curiosity is a huge element within our own evolution as humans, human intelligence. And the aspect of understanding the phenomena of reality has so many different layers and ways of looking at that, the perspectives on that. So, and they're all networked. They're all, if you talk about color and paint, well, what is color? We can talk about the beautiful pinks and so on, but we can also talk about it as part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's a visible force, and it's a wave, and it's an energy. And we can talk about oil paint as being ancient compressed oil from palms, and we're grinding that with minerals from deep time, and we're using our neurons to formulate and to organize. So there's so many different ways one can enter the way that we exist and that phenomena of reality and those connections. So that curiosity of, well, how do I know about these things? Like how do we even enter that conversation? So it doesn't make sense that we wouldn't all have some access to that. We may converse with it in different ways. Niels Bohr, the physicist, talked about the only way to understand quantum physics or the behavior of an electron in a non-mathematical way was through poetry, or an extension of that, the language of art. So one of the things that, if you look at the translation and the transfer of knowledge from one language through another, well, all those languages are different. So the material language, the metaphor languages, even sonic rhythm, all of those languages will change the way those knowledges are expressed. They may look very different. They may not have the whole picture, but they are all valid languages that we are bringing together. And there was a reference earlier about indigenous knowledges as well, and the history of understanding the way that forces connect and are networked in our world. So one of the issues within our wicked problems that we have in the world is because we've had these silos that we're not working with all of these different challenges in a connected way. So art definitely has a cultural kind of construct. I mean, even the notion of knowledge itself is there's a cultural way that we understand. All of our languages have a cultural kind of framework, but we need to be in conversation with each other.
Absolutely. And in this current moment, we've got one of the biggest conversations is around climate change. There's a lot of wicked problems that are needing to be solved. And part of where science communication, I think, can help the most is in especially reaching younger generations. So I'm curious, and this is maybe more for Clara and for Stu, your experience with science communication, particularly with your TikTok account, wildly successful, 140,000 followers, which is huge. What have you seen coming out of that? Tell us a little bit about why you started it and how that sort of helped bring more access to what CERN does.
Yeah, so I do a lot of my science communication online. So I started doing this because, I love going to science festivals, so this is fantastic. But when I moved to Paris for my first postdoc, I didn't at the time speak French. And so going into a science festival was no longer possible. Or I could go, but it wouldn't be very useful for the people attending. And so I started doing a lot more online. I started on Twitter mostly and other social media platforms. And over the last couple of years, I knew about TikTok, and it was actually during the pandemic. I thought it was mostly just dancing videos and lip syncing, which it is a lot of that. But my mum downloaded it because I was locked down with my parents for the first 4 months. And she started getting videos about history, about archaeology, about just things that, because the algorithm learns what you're interested in. And I started to see that there was a real potential for, and people doing a lot of science communication on the platform already. So there's an Australian physicist called Astro Kirsten who does a fantastic job at Science Communication for sort of space-related content. And I watched her videos and just thought, oh, there's people are interested here. And I had looked on the platform and I didn't see anyone talking about particle physics. And so I made, when I got back to CERN, I made basically a video saying, hi, I'm Clara, I work at CERN. Is anyone interested in this? And within 3 days I had 50,000 followers. So I realized that, yeah, there were a lot of people on the platform who were interested, and they just didn't have access to science communicators talking about particle physics on the platform. And I think what I really like about TikTok is, it is a younger audience, so that's a really great way to connect with younger people who are interested in science. But I really like it's a lot more personal on the platform. For me, Instagram isn't my preferred platform because it has to be very polished, very aesthetic. But with TikTok, you can just get the phone out, film something quite casually and say, hey, here's a cool fact if anybody wants to know it, or here's me at CERN doing something in the lab. And it's much more of a personal connection. I think it also links with then the photographs that you've taken. The people are interested in the science, but they want to connect with the people. And I think on TikTok I have been able to connect with people because I show a sort of rawer side of the work that I'm doing. And I do live streams so that people can ask questions in real time and feel like they're actually at CERN and connecting with a physicist. So I kind of try to be their sort of local friendly physicist that they can ask any questions to. And no question is too silly because there's so much. I go on live streams with people doing other scientific content and I ask the silly questions because I'm not working in those fields. So I want people who ask questions to me to never feel like their questions are silly because you just don't know at the time and then you know the answer and it's not silly anymore. So yeah, and I've really enjoyed being on the platform and the engagement and the curiosity that's on there.
Yeah, it's quite direct, and research is showing that Gen Z actually has a high level of trust in scientists. Actually, one of the groups that they're looking to clearly quite hungrily for answers and for knowledge. Stu, with Triumph's science communication efforts, what are some things that you've seen and that you've tried over the years?
Yeah, for sure. We're not on TikTok yet, but find us there soon. I think it's really important for institutions and organizations like Triumph to back up pioneers like Clara, who are going out there and connecting. And in a lot of ways, I would assume there's a lot of folks that, tens, 50, hundreds of thousands of people who are being introduced to particle physics through your content. And that is incredible. And I think it's our job as institutions to sort of take that second row and really back you up and back up the work that you're doing. I think the way that communications is trending, and I think there's a lot of sort of space for innovation, is that good communications is really about dialogue. It's not one person talking to another. It's a two-way street. You really, to be an excellent communicator, I truly believe you have to be first and foremost an excellent listener, and that applies to marketing and it applies to science. And I think as we sort of build out what it means to be a science communicator or build out what science communications means, we're going to be finding a lot of opportunity to start listening to the people around us. There's a lot of folks who are interested in science but don't necessarily engage because they feel like it's above them or that it's too complicated. And it's our job to be listening to them and to be listening to their needs. So it really, to me, boils down to those same sort of edicts of curiosity, but also empathy and compassion and also listening. So I realize that's sort of grandiose and large, but I see science communications trending more towards less of this sort of dispelling party facts and more about what does the world what does the world need right now, and what are the people who are in this world, how are they reacting, what are they needing from society, and how can we support them through science and innovation. So
yeah, and imagining that future together through art as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one of my favorite phrases that I always use when I talk to scientists and to artists is that excellent science requires excellent communications. And to be a scientist, I think people used to knock it for sort of being in the ivory tower or being sort of isolated, but I think there's a growing understanding amongst the science community that not even just about funding, but if you want to make your work impactful, you need to have people understand it. And I know I was sort of harping on about evidence-based decision-making and people maybe leaning a little bit more towards rhetoric in the last sort of 5-10 years or more recently, but I think it's really our job as science institutions to say, hey, the problems to a lot of the world's the solutions to a lot of the world's problems lie in not in rhetoric or choosing a side, but in listening and listening to the evidence, listening to the scientists and the people producing that evidence, and then being compassionate.
And if I can just quickly add on to it, because I 100% agree, and not only do we want our science to be impactful and therefore doing the publish and the communications, but because it's also funded publicly, I feel like we really have a duty to share it with as many people as possible and to allow the people that are funding the science to feel ownership of it. And I think that's why it's really important to go out into communities to talk about the work that we're doing and not just wait for people to come to us, because there are a lot of people who are curious and already have scientific currency. No, there's a better phrase. Sorry, it is like 5 a.m. my time. So, but scientific capital, I think, is the phrase. And they are coming, and that's fantastic. But it's really important to reach the people who haven't yet had the confidence to learn about science. And I think that's really where art and science communication can work together to reach those people as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. I believe we're out of time. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. It was a really interesting conversation. And I'm going to pass the mic back over to Nina.
Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for flying in, Clara and Andri. It was such an interesting and inspiring conversation. I hope we all can take some of it home, some food for thoughts. And yeah, thank you so much. And with that, I would like to briefly mention a couple of other events we are organizing in the framework of the Innovation Fest. So the next event is happening on Friday. It's a STEAM symposium at Emily Carr with 2 CERN physicists, one of them being Clara, a research scientist from Triumph, and artists from Emily Carr, one of them being Ingrid. And they're discussing questions and opportunities on how we think about collaboration between science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And then on Saturday, we're hosting a fireside chat between the director of CERN, Fabiola Gianotti, and between Triumph director Nigel Smith, and it's moderated by our dear colleague, senior science counselor Urs Obris from the Swiss Embassy in Ottawa. This is hybrid and virtual, and it's hosted at a New Media Gallery. And then next Tuesday, we're hosting a film screening at the Cinematheque here in downtown Vancouver. We're showing the movie The Sense of Beauty, an extraordinary film about the artistic work at CERN. And lastly, we will have an exhibition at New Media Gallery that will kick off in June with artists from Arts at CERN. And with that, I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight. It was such a pleasure to have you all here. It was such an honor. And when you leave the building, there's a little gift, a little surprise for you to take home. Thank you very much. Thank you.